Hey, how are you?
Hello and welcome.
Good to see you for our regular Thursday Night Live every 9:30 p.m. on Thursdays.
Thursday Night Live, they're calling it.
Yeah, Thursday Night Live. And why is it that some of us feel like narc bait? Because that was me. I don't know. Did any of you feel like narc bait? Did that something that resonates for you? Hi, Terry. Hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah, we see it so often, and it's interesting too from our perspective. Again, we've been where a lot of you have been. That's the reality, and that's why after having overcome that, we're here to be a service to you and share with you what's worked for us. But a lot of times we feel like our problems are unique and like our lives is so tough, and man, no one else would even, if they even knew what I've been dealing with and stuff like that. What we found is our story is eerily similar to probably most of you watching, and most of you in this group.
Yeah, totally. So let's dive in. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Gia. I see again a lot of our friendly faces. So good to see everybody. So the question that we're talking about tonight is being narc bait. If you have noticed that you've been attracting the same types of people over and over and over again, and you're like, why? Why is it that I only seem to be in relationships or have people in my life that are super, super unhealthy? I mean, that seems like something that's a big deal. That was me. I know it was like I had friendships that were that way. I had, my relationships were all that way. And it just kind of seemed to be like, well, I guess this is just the types of people that want to be friends with me.
It's rough, and we see it all the time. But I think the bigger implication of this is not just about relationships, because when you're in a pattern for whatever reason, and we'll talk about that tonight, of attracting the same kind of people, wittingly or unwittingly, into your life, it drains you. I mean, let's face it, like every area of your life is going to suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see it. Julie saying narc bait. Yep. So, people might say, well, why is it that everyone seems to be toxic and is a healthy relationship just seems kind of boring to me? I hear a lot of people say that. They're like, I don't want a healthy relationship. That's boring. I don't think we're really boring.
No, well, I have a lot of fun with you. And I mean, that's
like really actual fun.
Another thing that's a problem is that I think people get, they kind of get the blinders on, and it's understandable when you're just kind of naturally, for whatever reason, and we'll talk about it, just attracting the same kind of thing over and over and over. You start to believe, kind of like you were alluding to, that that's it. That's the way things are. That's the way people are. Let's not pretend that there isn't, a segment of the population that is woman-hating or man-hating, right? Because their experience has led them to believe that all men or all women are like
And some
that.
of you might feel like that right now because you've had those types of experiences. So who's ready to jump in? Write in the comments, attract, if you're ready to jump in and you want to start talking about narc bait. Seeing why is it that I seem to keep being narc bait.
Yeah, this is really important for a lot of people. I know we try to keep our finger on the pulse of the group and find out what it is that people really want to learn about and get our perspectives on. And this is kind of like one of the fundamental things, right? When you're thinking about breaking the cycle, when you've been beat up so much that you hit bottom and you realize that, like, holy crap, it finally gets your attention. The first thing you want to do is understand your situation and how you change it. And so many people find toxic relationships as their entry point into their own healing journey.
So let's talk for a minute first. Let's just talk about what a narcissist is. Because I know a lot of you, we've talked about this before, about being experts and doing all the research of what a narcissist actually is. But let's just give like kind of a simplistic version of it. Narcissists like to focus on themselves, and codependents like to focus on other people. So that's the quickie of both. Now, a narcissist is abnormally interested in themselves. That's really all they care about. They have an exaggerated sense of superiority. They seem to be better than everybody. They look for attention-seeking behavior. They believe they're better than other people. They deserve more than other people. They're very often very charming.
Yeah, they act in public in ways a lot of times that gets people to believe that they're actually better people. Like, it's kind of weird, right? Because you look at some people out there, and that's part of what I think makes people in those relationships crazy, because they're like, nobody believes me. They're really a psycho.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean,
they are. No, totally.
It's kind of true.
And they do it to draw in the other person, to let the other person's guard down, so that, the codependent puts their guard down, and they get excited by their personality, their excitement. A lot of times, like my ex was a salesperson, and he could sell ice to an Eskimo. I mean, he was really good at sales, but that meant he was also really good at selling himself into someone that I thought he was, when that's not actually at all who he was at all.
Yeah, it looks like we're getting some acknowledgement of that. Sounds familiar to some of you, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting too that narcissistic personality disorder is actually a psychological disorder. However, they are aware of what they are doing. It's not completely like some of it, they could say, well, I didn't know. But, they're aware. They're aware that they're doing it. And we know that because they're able to be one way in front of some people and another way in front of other people. And I remember plenty of times being out in public and I would watch him and I'd be like, why can't he be that way with me? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, I would have so much fun with him. He would be this entertainer and be exciting and interesting and people were drawn to him. And I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. It's so fun that he's like the center of attention and people, that just really like him. And then I would go home with him and he would curse me out because I talked too much or, he didn't like what I said to someone or, whatever. And so I would get a completely different person when we went home.
Yeah, just to kind of layer something onto that, it may be true that the narcissist, for example, is aware of their behavior, aware of their, tendency to manipulate, their ability to put on a different face for different crowds. But I'm willing to bet that even though they're aware of it, they still think they're in the right.
Oh, yes.
That's probably one of the main reasons why
those
of us who try to change this type of personality, you can wish in one hand and, well,
manipulative.
Try to change them in the other. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, Michelle says manipulative, and that's exactly what it is. And, as a codependence, it's learned from childhood. Did you have a parent, and it was from, preservation. I can't talk today.
Self-preservation?
Self-preservation. That's the word I'm looking for.
No wins.
Did you have a parent that was an alcoholic? Were they a drug addict? Were they just kind of aloof? Did they not support you? What was it like for you at home?
Emotionally neglectful. Just not there.
So, someone who's codependent, they have an exaggerated sense of responsibility to other people. So you've got the narc who is exaggerated, it's all about me, and the codependent is exaggerated all about somebody else. Well, why wouldn't they be attracted together? It's like exactly, polar opposites that work really well.
Yeah, one requires the attention. It's like this energy dynamic, it's sort of this parasitism. One feels like they've got to get that energy in order to be valid. The other one feels like they've got to give that energy in order to be valid. And you can easily start to see the dynamic that creates. It's an addiction on both ends, and there's some perceived benefit to the codependent in being there, right? I mean, if they didn't get some kind of sense of reward, and maybe it's just that they feel that in order to be validated, they must give of themselves and allow themselves to be taken advantage of in that way. And maybe because that dynamic's set up, they just have it built in as a rule. This is what feeling good is like.
So, I want you to think for a second of what it was like for you as a child. Think back to your parents, whether or not you had both of your parents around, one of your parents around, none of your parents around, the people that were the parent role models for you. How were they for you? What did you experience growing up? Now, we find very often that one parent tends to be the more narcissist or could be sociopath, have some kind of like disorder like that. And then the other parent will tend to be not around, not protecting you. All right. So it could be both of them that way. It depends. Some people, I'm sorry, they get two narcissistic parents, which doesn't last for very long. That often ends in divorce. But, because two people that really just care about themselves, it's not going to work for very long. But if you grew up in a family where one parent, and, you could look at the mom perspective, there's a lot of studies that for females, the effects of the mother being the narcissist versus the father being the narcissist have some different mental issues, but a lot of the times end up still having the same response, which is being overly the caretaker for everybody else. And guys too, guys, if it could be the same thing. If your parent has made you try to be just like them, you were never good enough. Everything was always wrong. You had to prove your worth. You were used to a family that was dysfunctional, that was stressful, that was uncomfortable, and you still tried everything you could to make them happy, to take care of them, to do, be the best little girl or best little boy you could be to try to make them happy. That, I would bet, has followed you to where you are. Because that is what to you love is. If that's all you know, and that's what love is, if you're in this family dynamic that there's always this discomfort going on, subconsciously that to you is love. So even though you might leave that relationship with your parents, you might even stop talking to them. Who knows? Something could happen, whatever. You stop talking to them. You don't see them, whatever. And you're still like, why? I know that this is wrong. I know I don't like it, but here I am going into another relationship where I'm doing the same things. I'm creating exactly the same things. And it feels really frustrating.
Yeah. And this is how the cycles perpetuate. That's how the behaviors pass from generation to generation. Mm-hmm. You know, luckily there are those of us, yourselves included, right, in this community, that are waking up to the patterns. You're starting to recognize that, you know what, no, this just isn't right. And you're wanting more for yourselves. I think that's true for a lot of you. It certainly was for us, to where you're willing to be open to new ideas, new perspectives, new ways of looking at things, and particularly ways to break the cycle and make a difference. I mean, shit, you can be a hero in your story to be the one. Think about it. If you've got a family history of abuse and alcoholism and all this stuff, and you're finally the one to have the clarity, the focus, the sense of passionate purpose to challenge yourself, challenge those ingrained patterns and break through it and make a difference for you, for your spouse, for your kids. And break that cycle, like that's huge. That's huge. I know certainly that's what I intend to do with our kids. That's why, again, my story was a little bit more about the important figure that was missing was one who's just, they were just missing.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure for my son, for my daughter that I'm
For you, it was more your father, and your mom was more motherly. For me, it was more my mother. So it's interesting how those role models play such an important, or have such an important impact on us. Yeah. So, when we look at the codependents and narcissists, so, here you are, you have a childhood where one of your parents is more absentee, and not really taking care of you. The other one might be more narcissistic. Again, you might have both of them more narcissistic or both of them aloof. So you're always trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove that you're good enough. And so you get into these relationships and you want to prove that you are enough because this is what you've learned your entire life. So the dance of codependency and narcissists work really well because a lot of people, now this is really interesting, people that are codependent, they might have self-worth. Like they know that they deserve more, but they have low self-esteem. And now that's interesting because people are like, well, how could you have self-worth, high self-worth, but low self-esteem? So they've been maybe overachievers. They've done well in other areas of their life.
It's probably that they look at themselves more as a commodity. You can have value as a commodity and not because again, self-esteem is deep self-acceptance for who you are, not how well you fit into someone else's economy, emotional economy, And
I was not a person to my ex. I could put her on a pedestal and she could look cute on my arm, but I wasn't allowed to have a personality. And when
she's gorgeous, but she's not meant to be a trophy wife.
I'm not good arm candy. I'm too.
And some guys is funny too because a lot of guys are intimidated by strong, independent, opinionated women. Steph is not the one by far to be the type to hide in my shadow. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. And I talk about
which
that.
I love, by the way, because,
Yeah. Well, and I talk about that in my book because, in my book, Being Loved Shouldn't Hurt, which is part of the toolkit.
The Essential Toolkit,
which is really cool.
We got that going on.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that I talk about is that, here I was, this bubbly person, and then I just kept being beaten down by this other person who was trying to not allow me to be who I was. And so me, who was pretty well, outspoken and everything else, was becoming very meek and very quiet. But here's what happens, and this is what happened to me, is that the narcissist thrives on the control. So you have someone who has lower self-esteem, you have the narcissist who wants control over you, they want the power over you. But they also don't want to be bonded. They're afraid of intimacy. They don't want that kind of connection with you. And, they're going to cause conflict and drama and they're going to, you are going to feel trapped because you saw that exciting, thrilling beginning of the relationship. They love bombed you. They sold you a product, which was them, but it was all made up. They just knew the right words to use to get you into their, under their spell to get you in. And then once they got you in and you were trapped, because I used to say I was as loyal as a dog, to get me in there. And then it was like, okay, by the way, whoosh, this is who I really am. And now as a codependent, you're like, well, I'm going to help you. I saw the good in you. You're an amazing person. You had all these great things, but that was never really them.
It's like fishing and there really is that hook. And people too wonder, we've had this discussion, like,
mirroring,
by being a codependent person, by having these tendencies, am I literally narc bait? Do they come seeking me out? And there's some debate over whether or not that's the case. I personally think that there is an unspoken energetic dynamic, and people can sense beyond words in a conversation what a person's personality type is. And I think there are instances where you can kind of be zeroed in on.
Oh yeah.
But there's also the point to be made that this type of person very often treats everybody this way, and they choose to get into relationships with people who fall for it.
Yeah. They're not going to be with people who can see through what they're doing, and not put up with it. Because the narc wants to be, like, oh, you're so wonderful.
And they need that constant fix.
They need it.
They need the emotional, juice.
So, and then what happens a lot, most of the time, and why is it so hard to leave when you've been in a narcissistic relationship as a codependent, is because of trauma bonding. So now you're bonded to them. You feel like, hey, they were so great. They were so wonderful. If I can just change this, if I can just do research, if I can, be different, if I can talk differently, maybe go to a therapist, whatever. And then we have that bond to them that even though, for me, it was also physically abusive and verbally abusive, I was still hanging out. I was still there taking it, hoping that maybe if I figured out what I could do differently, then things could be different. But the reality is he was never going to change. He had no reason to. He had no want to, because it was all about him and his background and the terrible, sad stories of him, his childhood, and how that was excuses for how he could treat other people. And of course, as the codependent, I would hear one of those terrible stories and I would think, oh, poor guy, I'm going to help him. I'm going to save him. And it would just reattach me to that trauma, with that trauma bond.
And you talk about the trauma bond and the bond. And it's interesting too, when I think about it, because on the one hand, a person can get to the point where they're like, I see what's going on here. This is awful. And I mean, even the words trauma bond, like, why would you have a bond with someone who's traumatized you? Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is that very often, unconsciously to the person, if you want to say the victim, the other, the partner, these emotional pathways they've created, it's like programming. Mm-hmm. They've created a groove in the mind. These circuits have been created, and there is an emotional rush. Mm-hmm. Again, you kind of talked about that too. Why are people attracted to the bad boy and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. There's a fix on some level. There's a reward. There's an emotional rush, a flood of dopamine and stuff like that. And that's why I think it's a big factor in why people eventually know better. Mm-hmm. They start to see the reality of the situation, and yet they still fall back into these old patterns. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many of you watching, and how many people do you think in this group how many times do we see, oh, I went back to him, oh, I'm going to go back, or this time, like all that sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it becomes almost like, like Pavlov's dogs, the narc rings the bell and you start salivating. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's that rush. So, we liking this so far? Is this good? Because I want to start, I want to jump into some other stuff.
Yeah, if you guys feel like this is a valuable conversation, comment value below. Let us know we're kind of with you. We've got 30 plus people watching right now, which is awesome. Really glad to see everyone on. But yeah, is this topic valuable? Does this resonate with anyone? Type value below. Let us know you're with us.
Yeah. And, for those of you who are looking for help, Essential Toolkit, just keep that in the back of your mind. This is stuff we talk about all through that Essential Toolkit. Definitely recommend jumping on that. So the next part that we want to go into is, why is it, and it kind of goes off of what you already started to say before, but why is it that we aren't attracted to healthy people? I mean, that's the thing. Like, most of us will say, I don't want to be in this kind of toxic relationship. I want to be in a healthy, happy relationship. That's what I want for myself. I don't want to keep struggling and fighting this, but we do everything we can to hold on to that relationship, even though it's not good for us. We don't let go. Well, what a lot of people say is, they're like, well, I'm just not attracted to the good guys. I just like the bad guys. And, what happens is, the reason why we don't like the good guys, and I'm saying good guys because I'm a woman and I'm heterosexual, so I'm saying the good guys, but it could go the other way as well. The good partner, yeah. But, the adrenaline rush of the back and the forth. When you're with a healthy partner, like, there's no fighting for David's love and back and forth and, throwing him out and having him come back in. There's none of those things. But when I was used to that, that's what I created. I mean, even someone after, actually before I met you, there was a guy that broke up with me and I created the drama. I was like, how dare you break up with me and it be normal and calm? Like, this isn't cool. I'm used to drama. I created it. And so we get used to that. Like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you causing drama? Because that's what we're used to. So to us, what other people that are healthy would consider anxiety provoking, we call that love. The excitement that we get at the beginning of the relationships, the butterflies that like, oh my gosh, are they interested in me? You know, all that.
He didn't text me back within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yesterday he used an emoji and today he didn't.
Yeah. The fighting, the back and forth fighting for the, you know, do they like chasing after them? You know, that avoidant person, like, I'm going to show them that I'm good enough. And that person that is a healthy person, you're not going to do that with them. And so that leaves our adrenaline. Everything like is like, boo, this is boring. I'm not getting my fix. So then what do? Well, we go back to the ex-partner, or we go to, you know, we find another person who's basically the exact replica, or a lot of times worse, because for me it kept getting worse and worse, of the other person, just a different face. And, you know, if we go back to who that original person was, it's not even the partners. The original person is back to childhood.
Right.
It's still that childhood issue that you need to figure out before you're going to move on from that.
Parents, family, you know, siblings, peers, educators, clergy. The list goes on and on of the ways we get programmed. And this is such a big part of this process, understanding that, you know, while you may not have been responsible for the programming you received as a child, as an adult, you're 100% responsible for changing it. And the big challenge for a lot of people is not realizing their own power. You know, and we've talked about it before too. Some people just aren't willing and able to ask for help from people who've actually accomplished that.
Well, that's one of the biggest things is the asking for help. You know, I often get this visual of, you know, being on fire and drowning at the same exact time and saying, hey, I'm fine. You know, so we don't ask for help. So one of the big things we have to do is we have to do things differently from what we did before.
You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different results.
And we know that. You know, we definitely know that, but our thinking is what got us here. So if all you've known from childhood is unhealthy relationships, you've been narc bait your whole life, and you're suddenly like, well, now I'm just gonna, you know, blink my eyes and all of a sudden I'm gonna not be narc bait anymore. I wish it was that easy, but it's not.
There's already blood in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry to overuse the euphemism, but I mean,
the
reality is if you don't become a different person, because let's not pretend this is like, oh, you just decided to try out a certain personality trait and it happened to attract this kind of thing. These patterns are ingrained. Now, the good news is they can be changed, but the bad news is life's not going to get better until you participate in that process.
So, you know, the biggest thing to keep in mind is no matter how much you try to tell them how wrong they are and prove your worth to them and prove to them how wrong they are, that is never going to work. You are wasting your energy. You are wasting your time. The big thing to start looking at is, number one, get away from them. Healing in the same exact environment that you are in that is causing pain.
Toxic.
It's toxic. So it keeps being toxic. You know, you have a plant that's not growing well and it's dying all the time. Do you leave it there? Or do you figure out does it need more water? Does it need more sun? Does it need more vitamins and minerals in the soil?
Transplant to better soil, yeah.
To a different place,
you know. To your point. So, you know, you got to start by breaking the cycle. And sometimes that means ripping off the Band-Aid. Get out. GTFO, right?
Yeah, seriously. The next thing is go gray rock. Now, I'm sure you've heard this before. But one of the reasons why we recommend as coaches to go gray rock is because the narc likes attention.
It takes two to tango.
And if you keep giving them attention, they're going to keep coming back. Now, you know, you got to keep in mind that they're going to have negative attention or positive attention, and they could go back and forth between the two. I mean, my ex would call me up and say, you know, I'm going to get you fired from your job if you don't go back out with me. I'm going to show up at your house. I'm going to scare off every guy that you try to date if you don't come back with me, which he did for a few.
He showed up on our first date, actually.
Yeah, he did. Like, he actually would do that. But you know, he needed for my ex, he needed someone to stand up to him, but he also needed for me to stop playing in. You know, I kept being so worried that how he was going to react that I kept giving him the attention. So he'd call and I would think, oh, you know, just so that he doesn't get mad, I'm just going to answer the phone. Now, that doesn't mean that when I finally made the decision to stop talking to him and really completely go gray rock, it was all smooth sailing. What happened was he got much more angry and started cursing and screaming. You know, they go from nice to get what they want to mean and belittling to try to get what they want. And then they'll go back and forth. Like, oh, that's the phone call, they trick you. The phone call starts and you're like, okay, it's going to be a normal conversation. And then like 5 minutes in, it's, you're a bitch because you did this and you did that and I hate you and I hope you die and, whatever horrible things. And you're like, oh, okay. Here's what we can do on the phone. Click. In fact,
that is an option.
We don't even have to pick up the phone.
Although these days it's boop. It's
yeah, I'm still doing the old person thing. But yeah.
After you dial them on rotary. He's got too many zeros in his number.
But, we don't have to answer the phones. We can, and another thing too is that if they send us an email, we don't have to read it. We don't have to participate.
What a relief.
I
know.
To know
that ask yourself beforehand, what am I really going to get out of this? Mm-hmm. And sometimes you will perceive you'll get something out of it. It'll scratch that itch. Oh, I just want to know if he's trying to get one little extra edge over. Mm-hmm. Save yourself the trouble.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
You're going to waste your time if you keep trying to explain to them how screwed up it is and how if you could just do blah, 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 your relationship could be better. It's
barking
not
up the wrong tree, people.
So here's the biggest takeaway that we're going to tell you right now. For all the things that you can do with after narcissistic abuse is to get help. I mean, that is really hands down the only way that you're going to get better. The only way that things are going to change for you is if you get help. Because here's what happens. After you've been in this relationship, it's not just the narcissist. It's why were you the bait to be with a narcissist? What originally got you there? And then now that you were there and you were in that narcissistic relationship, who are you? You've, for so long, how long have you tried to make the other person feel good? How long have you tried to dull your shine to make them happy? Who are you as a single person without somebody else's noise in the way and you being able to make your own decisions? Well, most people after, an abusive relationship like that, they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. When I'll talk to people on the phone when we jump on a phone call during the Essential Toolkit, which is amazing. We get to jump in and talk about like, what do you want for your life? What is it that you want? What are the tools that you're going to use to get there? Let's talk about that. Because most people that have been in these relationships, they don't know what they want for their lives. I'll say to them like, what do you want, on your deathbed? What do you want? And they're like, I don't know. I want to be happy. Well, what does that look like? And they don't.
And how do you feel right now? Lost.
Yeah, lost. What do you want for a relationship? I don't know. I don't know what one looks like. Well, how are you going to learn how one looks like if you don't have the support to teach you how a healthy relationship looks like?
Yeah, and our, the influence of being in these negative romantic relationships, it goes beyond just that relationship. And a lot of people find that part of the reason they're not getting better is because their friends enable them. Mm-hmm. They support them. The people in their lives are tend to be the same kinds of people, just in different levels and in different capacities. Mm-hmm. So, one of the best things about getting help is realistically finding help that's from people who are where you want to be, people who have actually solved these problems. Mm-hmm. But also, sometimes you got to change your group of friends, have a community that is literally committed to making these positive changes and overcoming the same things that you're going through. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's not pretend, let's not be so proud like a lot of us are, like, I can figure this out on my own. I mean, we would have been there already. Thinking mm-hmm. is what kept me dissatisfied and frankly miserable for years longer than I needed to. Mm-hmm. Because I was too proud to say like, and then I would downplay my problems. Oh, it's not really that bad. Stuff like that, like ridiculous. Now, the good news is that once you partner up with the right people, get the right coaches, for example, mm-hmm. it doesn't matter how long you've been repeating these patterns because, you can literally shift your mindset mm-hmm. and inoculate yourself against these types of personalities, mm-hmm. literally become a new person. Not better in the sense that you weren't worthy before, but just better because now you know how to think better. You can get back into control of your life and stop being a slave to these patterns and just this cycle of toxic relationships.
Yep. Yeah.
So how do people do that?
Well, you create your team. And, I'm going to say right now, if you haven't spoken to a therapist ever in your life, make an appointment with one. We're coaches that specialize in healing from unhealthy relationships. I mean, this is what we do. We work with this every single day. The thinking that got you here is not going to be the thinking that gets you out. You need someone that you can trust and feel comfortable with, who's where you want to be to get you out of that pattern of thinking and start making different choices because it's not comfortable and it's not like normal and easy for you. Because you've never, most of us have never experienced it. Or we're so confused after the last relationship that we don't even know which end is up or down. So it's really important to get that kind of support. David does something called Psych-K, which is a high-speed mindset change. That changes those subconscious beliefs that we have. I don't care if you're 50 years old, 70 years old, 20 years old. It doesn't matter. You can change those patterns pretty quickly and stop those negative thoughts from coming up and repeating themselves. It's really all about deciding to make a change and committing to yourself, because all of that energy that you've put into taking care of somebody else, imagine how beautiful it would be for you if that energy was put back on you, and then you could still help people. Like, I don't want anyone to think that, being a helper is always a bad thing. Hey, we're helpers. We like helping people. We help in the group all the time.
It's the reason that you do it.
Yes.
It's the reason that you do it.
And I'm not there to help and fix David. That is not my job. It is not your job to help and fix your partner. It is your job to be a partner, for them to be a partner, for them to be, excited about making the relationship happy and healthy and fun and finding joy and being inspiring to each other. That's what a healthy relationship is.
And I just want to layer something else on, in addition, you're turning that energy on yourself to help and grow. And again, get in the right direction, get with the right people, commit to getting the help you need. But the amazing thing is that when you succeed, when you start to come through the other side, and sure, we can say healing is a lifelong pursuit. I don't believe that we're destined to be permanently damaged. But the reality is when you start making these new distinctions, begin to change at a fundamental level and become your own knight in shining armor, you're not going to need to attract and get into these relationships. The toxic ones are not going to have the same appeal. And you not only benefit from the abundance of energy that you were previously wasting, but you become the type of person who is actually very appealing to somebody who doesn't need to suck the life out of you.
Yes.
They're actually there to say, hey, another person who's done the work, hey, look, your past was sketchy, you've had some problems, hey, that's all right. I mean, look, that's our story.
Yeah.
Like, if we were judgmental, we might have been like, wow, damaged goods. But the reality is we did the work on ourselves, and when we found each other, it was so easy. I mean, it's beyond words. I mean, our courtship was very short. It was like, wow, okay, this is the real deal, real deal.
Yeah.
Granted, she resisted a little bit at first, but
I did, because I wanted to make sure that he was who he said he was, because I had been someone who had been in those narcissistic relationships. But I see a bunch of people, some of our clients that are commenting, that they're starting to see the light. Zoe, she's starting to see the light. And, a few of our other, clients, current clients right now that have commented on there. And hi, Terry. And so there's a bunch of people that are watching right now that we're currently working with and helping recreate and, actually, and not even recreate. I just want to say create. Because some of us, we've never been really not committed to ourselves, but we've never known who we are.
Well, that's just it. I mean, and that's one of the benefits. We think about how nice it would be to be in a relationship where I don't get treated like shit. But you know what? There's the bigger picture, and this is what I look at. Beginning to be able to find yourself. Like we talk about what a good relationship looks like. Being able to be true to yourself and authentic and really start to get to know yourself for who you are. Through the healing process, we help you learn to accept the parts of you that you can't change, again, you get to know yourself on a deep level, and that I think is just so fulfilling.
Yeah. So, I see some questions, and I saw one. I'm going to answer that one, and then we'll go back. A lot of times we go back at the end and just respond to things. But one of the questions that I saw was, why is it that I can put up healthier boundaries with my friends than I can with someone that I have a romantic relationship? And my immediate response is, you're not having sex with your friends.
There's different reward pathways.
Your friends you meet up with for lunch, you go out with partying, having fun, going out to dinner, whatever. The relationship that you're in, they're the person that you do things with, that, you feel like if they're not going to be around, well, I'm going to be alone. But you have to imagine, how alone are you with them? There's always this fear that I hear from clients that will say, yes, but if I, break up or get a divorce, then I'm going to be alone. And it's like, yeah, but how long have you felt alone? 20 years, 30 years? How long are you going to keep wasting your life this way? So, it's the reward. I mean, that's really the sense of loss is different from a romantic relationship than a friendship, because it's just like the time that you spend together. And also it's also what society Yeah, it's the intimacy, which
it
again
has more of an impact. It carries more weight.
The perceived intimacy, because with a narc, they're not really intimate anyway.
There you go.
But, it's also what society says. Society, and, a lot of times we'll look at men and women differently if they're in a relationship or not in a relationship. So if we see, we're at a different level if we are married or in a relationship, or there's something wrong with me if I'm not in a relationship, then we will try to hold on more tightly to that relationship, even though it sucks. Because, they often do.
So hopefully you guys have found this valuable. We're getting close to wrapping it up.
Yeah.
So how do you want to kind of wrap this all up, though?
Well,
this is a really good topic, and again, I think the moral of the story is there's hope. You can get past this, and once you start to understand where you're at, you can kind of get your bearings. And then, with the right help, you can get a roadmap to actually a much, much different life experience, better relationships, better self-esteem, less stress and anxiety.
Yeah, and if you're looking for, if this resonates for you and you're saying, hey, yes to all the things that you talked about today, and I know I can't figure it out on my own, let's jump on with the Essential Toolkit. You can get a copy of my book and my workbook, 30 minutes with me. We can really talk about some things and see where you're at, what's going on for you, and then make a plan of what we can do to get you moving in the right direction, because we don't want you to waste any more time doing this. Life is too short. If we have not realized it in the past few months, you never know what can happen. It is really important for us to start deciding that today, right this moment, right now, is the time to start creating that change. Make that today the day, the 24th of September, which is crazy to me, the 24th of September as the day that you decided to create something different for yourself, a new future. And this can be that pivotal moment.
Yeah. Today's my brother's wedding anniversary too.
And tomorrow's my sister's birthday.
9th wedding anniversary. So yeah, there's a sign there, I think. But
there it is.
I mean, look, when do you think change is really going to happen? I made the mistake for a long time of believing that my opportunities had passed me by, or if I was to be happy, it was at some point in the future. Change only and always happens right now. And look, just do yourself a favor and get honest with yourself. Be willing to ask yourself the tough questions and project out into the future and ask yourself if, you continue on the path that you're on. You don't do something different. You don't ask for help. Where are you going to be a year from now?
And it's Danielle's birthday tomorrow, which is my sister's birthday.
Oh, hey,
so that's
awesome.
Fun. Danielle's daughter's birthday. So if you would like some support, type in the word Essential Toolkit, underneath, just write down Essential Toolkit, and I will reach out to you and we can set up an appointment to chat. I can send you the book and the workbook. It's a great place to start. It really is the starter pack for the beginning of the whole new future.
Whole new you. Breaking the cycles.
It is. And it's, it's a great investment in yourself. It's important to have those. It's just a way to start, have that, jumping point of the conversation with me. We can get you moving in the right direction. So if that's something you would like me to reach out to you, just write Essential Toolkit and I will reach out to you myself after the live.
Absolutely.
And of course, if you're watching this as a replay, I will, still reach out to you.
Drop your
Don't
comments,
worry.
drop your questions. We love to keep the conversation going. It's a big group. It's a dynamic group. This is our full-time passion and, sharing this with you guys. And, but we still want to make sure we give you our attention. So do our best to respond back to everybody. And, we can do this together.
Have a great night, everybody. Always fun. Always enjoy seeing everybody.
Love it.
Yeah.
Every Thursday, 9:30 Eastern. Tune in.
Essential Toolkit. Bye.
Bye, guys.